In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Git so you can take control of your code. As a bonus, I'm even going to show you how to link it up to GitHub using SSH. But first, what is Git and what does it solve? Well, have you ever written code and it was working perfectly, and then you made a change and then it kind of broke it, but you couldn't get it back to that working state? No? Yeah, me either. Totally. Or have you ever worked with another person or maybe a team and you all wanted to change similar files or the same files? Well, Git aims to solve a lot of these problems. Git is a free open source version control system, or sometimes called source control. It allows you to take the current version of your code and store it in something that's called a commit. These commits are stored in a local repository, but you can also have a remote repository that can be synced to in something like GitHub, for example. One amazing thing about Git is that it doesn't just work for code. It works for anything that's a file. So even if you've been working on an art project in Photoshop, for instance, you can still save those edits from Photoshop with Git. So you can have versions for everything. Pretty awesome. All right, let's get into the basics of Git. So here we have this GitHub tutorial directory with this main.py file. We have all that it says in this file is print subscribe. Now you can see that within here, I have actually this terminal window much bigger than I normally do in my videos. And that's because we're going to be doing a lot of things in the terminal. Now, if you don't have Git, you can actually just go and download it. I'll add a link in the description for where you can do that. But you're obviously going to need to have Git installed in order to use Git. So that should be probably pretty obvious. All right, so to start out, we're going to initialize our GitHub tutorial directory to be a local repository. In order to do that, we're going to type git init. You can actually do git init and then space -b, and then you can actually give it a name. So we're going to go ahead and give it a name called main. Okay, so it now says that it has initialized the empty Git repository here. So you'll actually notice that this actually creates a directory. If I do ls.a, we can see that there's a directory under here, under this that we can't see here, called .git. Most operating systems don't show you things that start with a dot because there's no name before it. So that's why you don't see it. The next command we're going to use is git status. So git status basically shows you the current status of the current state of your repository. So if we press enter, we can see we're on branch main, which we can also see here. By the way, if you're following along, this is actually using the git bash. So I'm on Windows, but this lets me use a lot of handy stuff. So that's why it looks how it does. All right, so we see we're on the main branch. We see there are no commits yet, and we have some untracked files. And nothing added to the commit, but untracked files present, blah, blah, blah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add our untracked files. So in order to do that, we can do git add, and you can either do main.py, but what I usually do, because I usually add everything, is just dot. And dot will just add everything in the directory, so basically everything. So you're good to go. Now, let's run git status again, and we can now see that we are on branch main. We still have no commits, but we have changes to be committed. All right, well, let's go ahead and commit it. So in order to do this, we can do git commit, and then we can give it a name. This is basically like the description of the commit. So you can do this with space -m, and then in quotes what your commit is. So I usually call my first one initial commit. We can go ahead and create that. And there you go. Now, if we do git status, you can see we are on the branch main. We have nothing commit, and we are in a working tree clean. Our tree is clean. Excellent. No bugs in that tree. All right, so this is fantastic. But what did we really do? Well, we can actually type git log and see that we now have a commit this is my project account, and we can see that the head is pointing to the main. Okay, but what is the head? So the head is basically a pointer that's pointing to the most recent commit on your currently checked out branch. Now, you might be asking, well, what is a branch? A branch represents an independent line of development for whatever your repo is kind of aiming to do. This might be a new feature, might be a bug, or maybe a whole new thing that you're adding into whatever your project is. It's something that allows you to keep your new code separate from whatever the main branch is doing, because the main branch should ideally always be in a working state. So it should never have any bugs, should never be broken. If you're on the main branch, it should always be in a working state. Obviously, that doesn't always happen, but that's the idea. So what does a branch look like? Well, let's go ahead and do git branch jakeiscool. So we have now created the jakeiscool branch. If we do git branch a, we actually list all of the branches. So we can see we have our main branch, and with this little star and the fact that it's green, this means that it is the branch that we are currently on, which you can see. You can see that right here. If I do git checkout jakeiscool, then I am able to basically switch onto a different branch. So let's go ahead and do this. And now we can see that this says jakeiscool here. And if we do git branch a, we can see we are now on the jakeiscool branch. Now, you might say, like, it kind of sucks that you have to create a branch and then switch over to it. You can actually just do git checkout b and then the name of the branch, like test2. And then you can see we're already on test2 if we do that. But let's go back over to jakeiscool. So now that we're on the jakeiscool branch, we can safely make changes to our main.py file because we're not on the main branch. So anything we commit to it is just going to go into the jakeiscool branch. So let's make a change here. Let's print, hello, YouTube. And let's add another print, leave a comment. All right. Awesome. So now if we do git status again, we can see that we have modified this file. So we can go ahead and do git add, git commit, and added crucial information. Awesome. So now we have a clean tree again, and we can do git log, and actually we can do -- graph, and it will show us basically the state of things. So we have our initial commit, which is, we can see was called initial commit. And then we have our most recent commit called added crucial information. Now, let's go back to the main branch using git checkout main. And if we hop over here, we can see that our changes are now gone, right? So the reason is we've now swapped over to the main.py version that is on the main branch. The other version of main.py is actually on the jakeiscool branch. But what if we want the version that's on jakeiscool to be on main? Well, that's where we can do something called a merge. So we can now type git merge jakeiscool. And if we go ahead and do this, you can see that we have now moved our changes over. So as you use Git more and more, you'll find that when you do a merge, you might run into something called a merge conflict. Now, a merge conflict just basically means that there was an issue that the computer doesn't know how to automatically handle, where some code may have changed in the same place. So let's go over an example of how that happens. So let's say we're currently on our main branch. We want to change this by adding a period to subscribe. We're going to add this. We're going to commit this. Added period to subscribe. Okay, amazing. Now we're going to check out the jakeiscool branch. And within the jakeiscool branch, we don't have the period anymore. We're going to add 4 exclamation marks because I really think you should subscribe. Whatever. And then we're going to go ahead and add that, and we're going to commit this as well. Added exclamation points for important logging. Perfect. Now, let's go back over checkout main, and let's go ahead and merge jakeiscool again. So this time when we merge jakeiscool, we're going to see we have hit a merge conflict in main.py. So the automatic merge failed. So within our file now, you can see it's marked, it's now red, which means there's an error, something's wrong. Basically what we see here is we now have these two print statements, right? But we also have a lot of less than signs, and then head, and then a bunch of equals, and then a lot of greater than signs, and then jakeiscool. So head is basically pointing to the most recent commit in our current branch, in which case the main branch. And then underneath this, between this and this, is our change. So this is the affected lines, in which case we have print subscribe period. Okay. After the equal signs, we then have print subscribe exclamation mark, 4 of them. And then we have a bunch of greater than signs, jakeiscool. This is now saying that anything between these, or this line and this line, meaning this line here, is from the jakeiscool branch. You can see VS Code actually has some kind of handy things where you can accept one or compare them or whatnot. But in this case, it's simple. So we're just going to go ahead and delete some of the changes that we don't want. We don't need the subscribe period. We're going to keep the 4 exclamation points. Now we can go ahead and finish this. We're going to save the file. We then can go to git status, and we can see on branch main, you have unmerged paths, fix conflicts. So we're going to add in our change. We're then going to call commit, git commit. We're not going to pass it a message or a description. And you can then see that there was a merge branch jakeiscool. There were conflicts, and we want to just use this. So now we can, this is using, I believe, Vim. So you can just do :WQ, which means we're going to write and then quit. And then we can see that now it is done. So if we do git status, we're good. We're now on the main branch. We have subscribed with 4 exclamation points. And if we do git log graph, we can see that we initially added the period to subscribe. Then we added the exclamation point for important logging. But as you can see here, this is where we diverged, right? Both of these commits, this commit and this commit, were both from this original commit where we added the crucial information. But you can see these lines here are showing that it used to be good, and then it diverged. And then after that, we have a point where the lines come and meet back up. And this is where we have our merged branch jakeiscool. Sweet. Now, what if you want to go to an older version that you previously had? Well, we can also do that. So we're going to now type git log one line. And within this one line, we actually get these commit IDs. You might notice that these are just kind of like the first few characters of the longer version here. But with these, we can grab one of these commit IDs and use git checkout and then provide the ID and then a period. If we do that, we now go back to that version of the commit. So now we can see that we have subscribe period. So now if we do git status, we can see that we have modified this version here of the main.py. Now, this is great, but maybe we don't actually want this change. And maybe we're not even sure what it used to be. We can actually do git diff head to see what the difference is that we've made. So we've removed this subscribe with 4 exclamation points, and we've added the line subscribe with 1 period. Now, what if we decide that we don't actually want this change anymore? Well, if we do git status, we can see that we have a modified version of this file. So we can do git restore staged main.py. And then if we do git status again, we can do git restore main.py. So it's basically moving the modified main.py file to become unmodified and not tracked. And then we're reverting that change. Now, this is already super powerful because we can track versions of basically anything. But what happens if your computer crashes? We're kind of out of luck at that point. So let's go ahead and make a remote repository that can mimic our local repository. And then that way we can make changes in our local repository and then push them to our remote one. So that way, regardless of whatever computer you're on, you can have access to the current up-to-date version of your code. I just want to really quickly say that we are going to use the command line for this. There is a GitHub GUI, which is super useful and I kind of tend to use more because it kind of handles all of the authentication parts for you. But just for completeness, I'm going to show you how to do it without doing that, mainly because the way we're going to do this is using SSH, and you'll probably encounter SSH at some point. So it's good to have some experience with it. All right, so here we go. We have our JakeEh projects account on GitHub, and we can refresh and we can see I don't have any repositories yet. We can go ahead and then click to create a new project, and let's just call it simple repo example. Awesome. Now, if we go ahead and create this, we can see that there's obviously nothing here. There's no code here because why would there be code here? But we can also see some information here on how we can kind of link up our repository. So, well, the one thing we're going to need here is this SSH version of this git at GitHub, blah, blah, blah. You can go ahead and just copy that by clicking this. And then we're going to go back to, we're going to basically follow this here. And we're going to go back to our code. So within this, we're going to go ahead and do git remote add origin and then paste in this link. And then we're going to press enter. And if we do git remote v, we can now see that the origin for fetching and pushing code is going to be from this simple, or basically this link. So what we would like to do next is push our change. In order to do that, we would do git push u origin main, where origin is the name of the git remote repo, which is basically just linking it to this. And we're using the push command. And then we're also referencing the branch that we want to be pushing. Now, if I run this, we're going to see an error. We're going to see permission was denied, public key, and basically I don't have access to do this. Now that's good, because you don't want anybody to have access to do this. So in order to get access, we're going to create an SSH key. We're going to create an SSH key using this command here, ssh-keygen space -t space ed25519 space -c space, in quotes, the email you're going to use to connect to GitHub. Now, if I press enter for this, we can see that it's going to say that it's going to generate a key. We can enter the file name where we want this. Let's just do c users captain lie .ssh JakeEh test. Perfect. Then we'll enter in a passphrase. Awesome. And then we get some random art. The TLDR for private and public keys is that they're extremely common in cryptography. And they basically allow 2 or more people to be allowed to talk to each other. In this case, our computer and GitHub. This means that we're going to give GitHub our public key, and then anytime we try to connect with GitHub, we're going to reference our private key. And if they match, we're going to be allowed to use GitHub. So as long as we're the only one with the private key, we're the only one who actually has access. All right, so now what we're going to do is actually, because I'm on Windows, is move over to a PowerShell instance. Now within here, we are going to type ssh-add, and then basically the directory that we just added our key to. So we called it JakeEh tests test, and we're going to run this. Now we have to enter our passphrase, and it was added. Perfect. If you get an error about your SSH agent not running or something, I ran into this as well in the past, and I'll leave a link in the description for how you can hopefully solve that. All right, now going back to bash, we're going to do this clip and then less than, and then basically this means just the root, your root directory, your home directory, .ssh, and then JakeEh test, and we're copying the public version. So this is basically clipping like clipboard, like Control C, the contents of the JakeEh test.pub file onto my clipboard. Then we're going to go back to GitHub, and within GitHub, we're going to navigate to this ssh-keys page. You can just do that by clicking your avatar at the top, click settings, and then SSH and GPG keys. So it now says there are no SSH keys associated with your account. So we're going to create a new one. And we're going to paste in this key. And we're going to just test key. We're going to keep it as an authentication key and click add SSH key. All right, so we have now added the SSH key to GitHub, the public one. And we have now linked the SSH key to our SSH agent. Then we're going to do git push u origin main. And we can see we have now pushed our new branch from main to main using the origin main. In order to do this, you might have to create a new version of the of your bash, your git bash. I needed to. The reason for that is because your original git bash version or terminal window is referencing an older version of the SSH agent. So when we've added our new key, we need to open up a new one so that it's referencing the new stuff. All right, so let's actually go back to GitHub, and we can refresh the page here, and we can see we have this incredible code right up on GitHub. Now, that means that anytime there's a new change on GitHub on a different computer, you can do git pull, and it will go ahead and try and pull any of the changes from GitHub and update your current working set. All right, that's Git. If you have any questions about how to use Git, or I don't know, other things you might want to see me do a tutorial on, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, please drop a like down below and consider subscribing for more tutorials like this. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Remember, I'm Jake. You're awesome. This has been Git. Cheers.